I give it 30 seconds while people join, or
Oh no! Well, literally, the second you said you want to give it 30 seconds as people join, I clicked onto the screen where everyone can see us. So we are now live and streaming.
Yeah,
Hi everyone!
what do I know?
Welcome to the roundup here on BloodbowlLive. Here to go through, here to go through all of the week's fixtures from the latest season of the ADBBL, season 8. We've got 11 games to go through this week. Some very key fixtures were played in this week. Some very interesting position deciding games, and the rampant charge of the Riotous Rams as well in the mix there, so we can see how they're clawing up the table. Joining me as always, Mr. Scott Bryant. Scott, good afternoon, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Chris. That threw me, but how are you?
I'm good. I'm very good, thank you.
Cool evening, chat.
Also joining us, Mr. Tom Hovell. Tom, good evening, sir.
Evening.
Yes, all good, all good. Very happy to be in the warm this week, which is lovely. I don't know how I sound. I might sound echoey because I haven't put the soundproofing up in here yet, but we'll see. We'll see how we get on. It'll do, I think is the phrase.
So what you're saying is you've been allowed back in the house, Chris?
I have been allowed back in the house. There's many caveats, including the pink and gold shiny curtains are not allowed to be changed. But the wall behind me did used to be pink, and I was allowed to paint that green. So we got a little bit, and I think it's quite good. It's the matching green of the Ducks jersey, which I think is quite good. So anyway, enough about where I'm sat. Why don't we dive into some Blood Bowl? Looking at our first game this week, and we have the Hillbilly Howlers versus Sir Honkington's Folly. Do not be fooled by the game length on this one. It was a game played over 2 days, 2 halves over 2 days, but a win for the Gnome team, a 2-1 victory. Many casualties coming for the Chaos Chosen side. But a very important win for the Gnomes in their battle to get themselves in the fight for the Stunty Cup. Scott, coming to you first then on this one. This was kind of two teams at varying ends of the table with various different pushes. The Gnomes have done really well this season to keep themselves in that mix and looking good to keep up the competition with the Stunty Cup runners.
The Gnomes have had a fantastic season. Tom has sort of defied everybody's expectation, including yours truly's. He's really put together a good run, and we knew coming into this game he had some momentum behind him, even though it was spread over two halves over 2 days. He did some good. He's really utilizing those foxes. Despite the fact it seems to be that every match he plays, the foxes get killed. It's a bit like when you take Acorn, everybody targets the squirrel. But he's been playing very, very well indeed. I spoke to Simon briefly about this yesterday, actually. Simon was explaining his love-hate relationship with his chosen Minotaur, who on paper looks very, very good indeed. But otherwise, he just stands there and he rages a lot of the times because he fails his... it's not his animal savagery, is it? It's the other one. What's the other negative trait? That's the one, the unchanneled fury. So Simon was suggesting that it's been a very insightful season for him, and he's pleased the way the season's gone, even though that sounds a bit perverse because it's a new team for him. Maybe the results haven't gone the way, but he's learned a lot, and that is a really important lesson we need to all take as Blood Bowl coaches. So I think Simon's a bit unsure. Should he redraft, but not necessarily with the Minotaur? And of course, it's just shown from the other side of the spectrum, as you said, Chris. Tom has really taken these Gnomes and he's really built on his first season with them. So yeah, and of course, the thing is, Simon mentioned something important. He's actually, and I know we can have the argument or discussion about inducements, he has faced quite a number of redrafted teams in the league this year.
Yeah, he's had a tough. Simon's had a tough draw. The Gnomes have also had a tough run as well. I think we saw glimpses of the Gnomes last season with some big victories and some big results against some key people, and again, it's kind of continued today. Tom, how do you kind of see the gnomes sitting with the stunty group that we've got? We've got the gnomes, we've got the halflings, and we've got the snotlings. And I feel like because the gnomes are in a group by themselves, there's two stunties in the other group. Feels a little bit like they've gone under the radar a little bit, but absolutely in contention for that stunty cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice to see because, when you looked at when the gnomes first came out, it was a bit, what are they all about? They didn't have dodge and they or had guard everywhere and jump up. And it's nice to see that there is, Tom's actually doing some really good kind of work with them. He's obviously got his head round the best way to play them. Although, just like any other stunted team, they do suffer very heavily, as Scott's mentioned, on injuries straight out the bat, in particular on this one. So 2 down in the first half, kind of, so to speak. But yeah, those foxes, they're definitely something to look out for, aren't they? Because they're pretty quick. No, it's great that he's doing it. And like you say, because he's kind of effectively on his own in his own division, he's kind of going under the radar.
We will have a look at another one of Sir Honkington's Follies games later on. Well done to Simon for getting all of his games in. 8 games played. It'll be interesting to see how those Chaos Chosen fare with some good skills in the playoffs. Moving on to the next game. Oh, actually, do we have to?
Yes, we do.
Moving on to the next game, and it is a 3-1 victory for the Riotous Rams versus the Bitey Ducks. 6-1 on Cash, an absolute show of force by the Chaos Chosen side here. Very well played by Rich in this game. As I normally do, I'll hand over to you two for any questions on how this one went down.
Okay. You scored first. You scored early. But at what point did you start to cry?
I'm guessing probably we say turn 3, perhaps.
So, yeah.
I think Gordon Bombay didn't have a very.
So, I think turn 1, I used my APOC to keep my Saurus with block in the match. So at that point, I was a bit concerned, and then it just kind of kept going. Wasn't too, went 1-0 up, and I wasn't too worried. I thought, there's a chance to kind of defend this to a degree, but very, very quickly, players just started to go, and not just players, like it was Saurus that were going, and just left me absolutely at a disadvantage with the strength, and there was very little I could do to combat it. That being said, I felt that after Hackflem scored on turn 6, I thought there was a chance. I just needed to succeed on picking up the ball. But before I scored my touchdown, I'd used all 3 rerolls, not like rerolling double skulls or skull both down. So I had no rerolls left, couldn't pick up the ball. Otherwise, I thought maybe there was a chance to kind of stay in the game. And then just players kept dying and getting really bad injuries. So no tears in this one, because I felt a little bit like I was kind of a passenger watching events unfold, without really much that I could do about it. If you assume that in a game of Blood Bowl you're going to be punched at least once a turn, you can't really prepare for that punch to always remove a player from your team for the rest of the game. So it's kind of, you can't be angry at that.
So with this, and don't want to kind of dwell on it, was it the fact that Nanny's got claws that was having an impact on your casualties? Because clearly Nanny took out Coxagore and then a Besaurus blocker, and then a skink as well.
Yeah, Claw's Mighty Blow definitely had a say. But I don't remember many armor breaks where it wasn't a 9 or 10. So that is casual. That's a casualty on a skink every day, regardless of the additions. And there were lots of 10s, 11s, 12s in there as well. So, yeah, absolutely had a factor, because I think there were some armor breaks that wouldn't have been armor breaks without the claws. But Rich's dice was so hot. I didn't feel like I played badly. Rich didn't put a foot wrong and had the dice to back him up. Really, really strong performance from him.
I have to say, watching this, and it is on YouTube if anybody wants to go back and watch it, I think for me, one of the things that sort of really tipped it in Rich's edge, not just the fact that he was getting all these casualties and that, but every time he moved into your half, Chris, to have the movement 9, and actually, if you want to go with the double rush, movement 11 threat of Hacklem just sitting there behind it with the ball. I thought it was going to be a really tough showing. So I thought when you took the 1-0 and then when Rich came back to 1-1, I thought if you could have got a 2-turn touchdown in there, maybe, I thought, could this be on? But yeah.
I thought so as well. I think it just wasn't. It just wasn't my day. And that's fine. You have to have those games to then appreciate ones that go your way, don't you?
So
but
Rich is chatting just before you finish. Rich is saying that you didn't really play very fairly. You kept your skinks hidden at the back. That's very unsportsmanlike, Chris.
I did, because in a normal lizard game, you would protect the skinks and the saurus could hold their own, but he was just plucking off saurus like they were skinks, so it didn't really matter. Hey, Rich didn't put a foot wrong, and I can have all the bad luck in the world, and my opponent still has to capitalize on it, and Rich did that. So a very strong start there for Rich. We'll come back to my Ducks later on for another disappointing result, but we will go on to another game for the Riotous Rams, a 1-1 draw against the Bleeding Clowns here. If the game before was lots of lizards being removed off the pitch, this game slowly by the second half turned into a lot of Rams being removed off the pitch. The Corn team here doing very well to keep the numbers down, keep Bob and Nanny at bay, surfing Nanny at some point in this game to take them off the pitch and stop them being troublesome. And the Clowns managing to get a draw out of this. Both of these two teams are powering and fighting to try and get a position in the top 4. Still possible for both of these teams to get a position in the top 4. Tom, coming to you on this one, the Corn team here, the Bleeding Clowns, have dropped a few points at times in the season. This probably we all kind of know the reputation that the Rams have within the league. So this might feel a little bit like a 0.1 rather than 2 points dropped for the Clowns.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that Scott doesn't like to lose and have touchdowns scored against him. So it does seem to have been quite a kind of difficult game for both players, actually. We've got two expert coaches that know their teams very well. So looking just down the list, it was kind of a little bit of a tit for tat, or backwards and forwards, injuries, casualties, back either side, and then a touchdown on the last turn of the first half by the Rams, and then followed up all the way through to a final draw touchdown on the turn 16 for the Bleeding Clowns. So it does seem to be one of those games which is probably very tactical, knowing both players. They know how to do pushes and trying to take each other out and positioning their players. So it does seem to be, as you quite rightly put it, like a bit of a win for the Bleeding Clowns.
It's interesting in this one, and Scott, I'd be interested in kind of what you think on this. We've got because the Rams sort of are getting a lot of their games in sort of near the end of the group stage here. We've got kind of most of these games are one coach with an eye on playoffs, knowing roughly where they sit, roughly where they'll be, and roughly what they need, and then another coach who very much sort of is still almost in that early stage, figuring out roughly where they're going to land. Do you think that kind of changes the mentality? Like, you've got two very different kind of thought processes here. Maybe the Clowns happier with a draw, maybe the Rams happier with a draw. I don't know, because they've got more games to play to kind of make up the points. Does that kind of change how these games sort of get approached?
I think yes, and I think it does more than we've seen in previous leagues. In previous leagues, your first division was 4 teams. So realistically, by your you got 5, so you have 6 games. So by your 4th, game, you've got a fair idea as of where you need to progress, and by turn, game 5, are you going to progress? In this, it's imperative not to lose. With so many more teams, I think it adds so much more value in there. From the beginning of the match, for both coaches, Acredes and the Clowns, they knew they couldn't afford to lose. That was the key thing. And therefore they, might have had a bit of a slight risk aversion, especially if we look at the timings. And I think it was felt that maybe there was an opportunity to push for a second touchdown. However, from Rich will just play people in front of him, and usually he will just beat them, as we saw with the Ducks. He's exceptionally knowledgeable in terms of how to play these Rams, especially with Nanny and Bob. This was a game when we talk about games turning on its head and going 180 degrees. It started with the Rams. They got the blitz kickoff. They got, I think it was 2 KOs in the first drive. They got the early catch. So the momentum was really with the Rams. So, kudos to Scott for sort of weathering that storm. And then it turned around. So after the 1-1, to get down to, I think, was it 4 or 5 left on the pitch for the Rams? But with a surf on Nanny, with the crowd love him, of course, or love her. With the APOC used on Bob, so a good advertisement for all medical practitioners everywhere. It just kept them in there as well. And I think, because Rich is such a good coach, it sort of led to Scott really thinking, do I want to risk going for that second touchdown and exposing, or do I want to go for that second touchdown and risk giving Rich the opportunity to score with the Rams? Or do I take the draw? I know where I am. It's now in my own hands, or the roll of my own dice, if I progress or how I develop further in this league. So a bit of a long-winded answer, Chris, but yeah, I liked it.
Rich is in the chat. Scott and I each scored on each other after kicking to each other. A strange game, a true game of two halves. Lots of coaches watching this one, and happy to see both teams drop points when looking at the fight for the top 4.
When you mean all coaches, do you want to define that a bit more? So just you and Luke.
Yeah, me and Luke, I think. I think probably. Moving on then to we're back on the Gnomes, and so Huntington's Folly versus the Rust Bay Riptides, a 2-0 victory for the Corn team in this game, and the 3-1 casualty victory as well. Two teams both battling it out for a spot in the top 4. It's going to be a bit of a task for both teams to try and get there. I think possibly now not overly possible for both of them, but an important to get a win nonetheless. It's going to be very, very tight in those 5th to 8th positions in this group. And both coaches wanting to make sure that they don't possibly drop down further. A good result for the Corn team in this game. It's an interesting one, Scott. The Corn team here. Gnomes probably like an interesting side to face, because with the Stunties, you're normally used to them having dodge, and with the Frenzy, you're probably therefore thinking, I'm going to push these guys around all day long. No dodge on the Gnomes, so that Frenzy possibly not as effective, or maybe it is as effective, I'm not sure. Is it kind of easier because there's less likely to slide them around? You're more likely to knock them down?
Yeah, possibly, yes. First of all, though, I do want to shout out to both coaches, to Tom and James. If ever you do want, and anybody wants to listen to a really entertaining game of Blood Bowl, jump onto YouTube, listen to this. A big round of applause for both coaches. They played it in a wonderful style, a wonderful camaraderie as well. And it's a really great piece of entertainment to watch as well. Very, ridiculous and entertaining as well. even though the scoreline looks, with all the injuries and that, and the possibly maybe it looks a bit more deceptive than it was. Tom was his dice, not to suggest like Tom in any online here, but Tom's rolls weren't where they were against Simon and in previous matches as well. There were a lot of failed rolls into ones on dodges. But despite that, there was a lot of, should we call it, stunty uncertainty for James. He was very cautious, very aware that, the gnomes can really turn things around very, very quickly indeed. And there were a lot of times they were doing. A lot of times, at one time, good old Sir Honkinson himself, he literally walked through a cage of chaos, of Khorne. And it was just incredible to see. Unfortunately, he did fail a blitz with a skull, but we won't hold that against him. So really great game, a good one. And I think it just came to the roll of the dice and the momentum went with James, plus the strength now coming through on this Khorne team. And unfortunately, it was a bit too much for the gnomes on this occasion.
It's looking at James's side here. He's had a real. He's got some really good skills now. Random mighty blow on a Bloodseeker and a Khorne Gore is a very welcome addition to his skills. A few stat busts on some linemen, but he's kept with them for now. Tom, looking at James's results, he had a very slow start to the season, but he's now put down a run of 6 games unbeaten. Put himself in the fight. He's going to be finishing in that 5 to 8, and he's going to be a tough opponent for whoever he gets in the playoff round.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that we're getting to the back end of the kind of the divisions, so to speak, you can really start to see some of these teams getting some quite awesome special skills. You mentioned at the beginning there that gnomes don't have dodge. Well, this team does. It's got 5 of them now sitting with dodge, so that's a really nice little thing, plus a sneaky git, plus this is the gnomes, and plus a tree with block, grab and juggernaut, which is pretty fearsome. But as you quite rightly say, it's the same with James's team. He's got some very fortunate randomizers on there, apart from the pole driver. Let's not forget that one. But he's got pro as a random as well, which is great to have. Yeah, it was a fun game to sit be next to and listening to and watch. And I'll apologise because it's probably my proximity to Tom's dice that may have swayed it.
I think from an audience perspective, Tom, it was interesting to listen to the 2 guys there playing, and in the background, I could hear you and Phil and Chris talking about bombs and blowing people up as well. So yeah, entertaining the Blood Bowl masses. Look at that. James calls out in chat. He says, "I served a sidestepping fox too." So super happy with that. That's a thing of beauty, that, isn't it? We all like that.
I did look over at the pitch to see that happening, and it was sort of it was okay. I think it was something that was too tempting to not do. I don't think there's any world where you would not want to do that. A very good season for both of these coaches, I think, and possibly 2 coaches who I think, with a bit of luck, maybe in some other games, good enough to be in the top 4. So they're going to make that second playoff bracket a very, very tough one indeed. Moving on to the next game then, and Tom, we're over to you. And if we've got to do mine, we've got to do yours. A 3-0 victory for the Khorne side, for the Gilded Knights of Cerulean against the Clueless Crusaders. 2-0 on the casualties here. A tough day for the human team. Tom, why don't you tell us how this one went down?
Yeah, so it started off a bit interesting because Phil threw a curveball and gave me a little bit more on the inducement money, which then made me decide on, rather than going for a crack and crumbleberry, go with a deep root and Cindy. First time I've ever played with a treeman, so I thought it'd be a bit of fun. It wasn't. It really wasn't. This Khorne team, and we've talked about other Khorne teams. This Khorne team is vicious. Having a team of Khorne with practically everyone apart from 3 players that all have, 4 players that have block is not a pleasant thing to be with. Having block and also strength 10 players on the teams, strength 4 players and armor 10 players, they were a nightmare. Claws, Phil knows his team very well. Straight away, he was using claws on that treatment. He knew how to keep it on the ground. I was playing around with Cindy quite a bit. She was okay, but unfortunately never managed to really break any armor, which was again a bit of a disappointment. I after the first touchdown, I tried to try every kind of trick in the book. I tried to do a one-turn touchdown and try to dodge past a whole load of players. That failed. I tried to foul my way through, got sent off, and then the casualties started, and I was getting KOs, I was getting badly hurt, I was getting injuries left, right, and center. So by about the second turn in the second half, I was thoroughly just like, what can I do? You just can't get past this team. But congratulations to Phil. He plays an exceptionally good game with this Corn team.
This is a Corn team that's 3 seasons in the making as well. There's a couple of players there who have been with this team for the long haul, and it's really starting to show with some of those skills. And it's when you look at the team, it's a very carefully built team. Block waiting to give block to the linemen, which already have frenzy. I mean, looking at Greninja here, I don't know whether there's a bounty on this player, but there absolutely should be if there isn't. Horns, Juggernaut, block, tackle, very long legs, and mighty blow. I mean, that's a superstar waiting to be utilized here. Scott, so we knew that there'd be a lot of Corn this season. Are we looking at probably the best Corn team in the league at the moment?
Oh, that's a very leading question, isn't it? It's difficult to say the best, but it is a very strong, very good. Stop laughing. It's a very good, a very strong team that Phil has developed here. He plays them well now as well. And similar to what I found in my loss, so you were in the same camp there, Tom, against Phil this year. When Phil gets the momentum in terms of the player numbers, it's really, really difficult. And then, as we all know in this game, momentum is everything. And as soon as, Phil got that. So I did, when I saw the 1-0 against Tom, I thought if Tom could get a quick 1-turn touchdown or 2-turn touchdown, then maybe. But then as soon as he didn't, as soon as it just felt when the sending off came through, it just felt, is the momentum going towards Phil? Absolutely. And Phil didn't let up. He did what a good Blood Bowl coach should do. And he got the win. He got the all the SPP. And he is looking in a very, very strong position. And I think it's one of those now, it's in his own destiny to try and grab a top 4 spot in the league as well. He's got 14 players, so it's not as if he's going to be if he's going to be pitch cleared. And as you said, Chris, he's a very good in terms of selecting. I mean, you've got Frenzy, Horns, Block. You've got Block, Claws, Horns as well. So, yeah, looking very good.
Yeah, just on that point, that is quite a good psychological thing for you against when you look at it and go, okay, you got all that block, you got 4 armor 10s, the rest are all armor 9s, few armor 8s, but they've all got block, and strength 4s are in there, and the juggernauts and the horns are in there. Plus, even if you did manage to get a few players off with a couple of KOs or whatever, he's got backup. He doesn't even need to roll for those KOs.
Yeah, it's a strong roster. It's a big roster as well. Phil, if we get to the end of the season and me and you don't end up in the same playoff bracket, and therefore don't get to play each other, I will tell you now that we can have a post-season friendly, your league team versus mine, and give you the chance to get the NDP hat trick over all 3 of us over the course of the season with this Corn team. Well done to Phil. A very tough day for you, Tom. But playoffs, there are more games to play and win in playoffs. Going on from your bad game to my second bad game of the week, the Suffolk Suckers versus the Mighty Ducks.
So just for all our coaches listening and watching, maybe no game is a bad game. It's all about the learning experience.
Well, that's true. Yes.
It will make you a better person.
Of course it will. A 3-2 victory for the Vampires here against the Ducks, a weakened Ducks team after the game against the Rams. And I think fair to say a good fight was put up by all, but the better team came out as the winner here. I've played Andy every season for the past 3 seasons, and I beat him in the first game I played, and I've lost every single game ever since. He's an absolutely fantastic coach, plays for the right reasons with the right attitude, and is great fun to play against. And he's got a good vampire team here that he's built up with some good skills, and he utilizes hypno gaze, possibly some of the best that I've ever sort of played against or seen. Really, really impressive the way that he uses them to his advantage. I spent the game building thick cages to make sure that if he did hypno gaze with every vampire, there was still someone next to the ball carrier, and even then he's managing to get through. So it's very, very impressive. I think a little bit of bad luck in the first half stopped me equalizing. Did all of the dice rolls I needed to get 3 dice on a player by the ball, and roll triple skulls with no rerolls left. And then the second half was very bouncy. It was very back and forward. Ducks, I had no choice but I had to make sure I lost this game by no more than 1 touchdown to stay ahead of the Orphic Gladiators. So as soon as I went 2-0 down, all I could do was chuck a skink up with the ball completely on their own, and just hope that he didn't get knocked down. And it worked twice, which is ridiculous because it's such a stupid tactic, and I think I got very fortunate. But a very good result here, and a very, very good win for Andy and his Vampires. Any questions?
I just want to say to Andy, great game, and I think his Vampire team, if he redrafts them for a second season, they're going to be frankly terrifying. If you look at what he's done with his Vampires, he's still got he's got kick on a thrall, which gives you that little bit of control as well. And block, dodge, sidestep on Alex Cock. I'm sure that's not a euphemism, but he's really put them in a good place as well. So he's had a very good season, and he's still got a number of games to go. So Andy can still have a very big influence on how this table ends up looking.
Yeah, both Vampire teams have had very solid games, very solid seasons. It's I wish my team was that good, but it seems that both of them have both followed the same kind of tactic where they prioritize block on all their players, or on the Vampires first, by the looks of things, before going for anything else. So they're storing up those points. And as you already say, hypnogaze, I love it. It's a really, really nice used skill. And I think not a lot of people know how to kind of combat it.
I think it's tough because my immediate thought was to make sure the cages were kind of multi-layered and scattered in a way that if you hypnogaze the outside, there was still kind of like a core in there next to your player. So there's always going to be some protection there. But I think I spent a lot of this game with 9 players on the pitch, so then you were a little bit short, and the players that I was having to put in that cage were skinks because I was 2 Saurus down. So what I think is interesting with these vampires as well is that I remember speaking to our other vampire coach, Mr. John Reeder, with his vampire team. And there are two different setups here. John's gone for the all vampire approach, and this is the 4 vampire and a Vargeist approach. So we've got two slightly different ways to run them. And I know that John was sort of a little bit skeptical. And I think what's interesting is that the Vargeist didn't feel like it was a game changer here. Spent most of the game kind of next to the Croxagore, kind of stood together, and I didn't really feel like it maybe had much of an impact. But actually, the way that Andy utilized Hypnogaze and utilized his other vampires, even just the strength 3, in my head, all the Croxagores are strength 4, or all the vampires are strength 4, but the strength 3 runners, he was putting to really good effect almost as blitzers, because he doesn't have any blitzers in this team. So a really, really good kind of tactic, very well played, and a very good result for Andy in what is a very difficult run-in. So, so well done to you, sir, and your vampire victory. That was my last game of the season as well. Currently still sat in second place with my eyes firmly down the table, hoping that everyone else trips up so that I can cling on to a top 4 spot. We'll be back with Andy in a second. But first, we will go over to the Washington Deadskins versus the Wolverhampton Shamblers. We had John's son, Joseph, playing this game on behalf of Jack. For the necromantic side against Jane's pre-existing necromantic team. It was admin, so Tor play is going to look a little bit odd here, but it was a draw scrambled from the jaws of defeat by the Deadskins to take some points away from Jane in her quest to get a good finishing position in the table. Tom, you're our go-to Necro expert. Necro mirror match, because you can probably play this team in kind of varying ways. How does a mirror match kind of work here? Can you actually end up seeing a lot of variety between the two?
Yeah, I suppose the fact is it depends on what skills they've taken on board, because as you say, they can match each other like for like. I was unfortunately playing another game, which so I couldn't really see much of this one, but it did sound like it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of backwards and forwards on it. I suppose when you're playing the same team or playing against the same team as yours, you kind of sort of know the tactics they're going to do. So you kind of focus on the certain players that were going to be your main threats. But by the sounds of things, it was just a fun game. By the looks of things, it's unfortunately wasn't kind of there's a bit of a problem with Tor play, so it didn't really give us the best answer as to what actually played out. But yeah, I think it's a difficult one, especially with the necromantic horrors, because they've got such a diverse range of different players. You've got your werewolves, your wraiths, your flesh golems, and your ghoul runners, all with very individualistic kind of positions and ways that you would play them. So it's a shame that Tor play hasn't given us exactly what panned out, but by the sounds of things, they had a great game.
I've got the crib sheet in front of me that was kindly written down by John, who was observing this game. The Deadskins here took okay. Took a star player, and it's the vampire star player, and it's Count LVD is what's written here. And immediately I wanted to say Count Luther Van Dross, and I know it's obviously not Count Luther Van Dross, but anyone want to say?
Should be. It's Luther Van Dracoff, isn't it?
So, okay, so I'm not far off. Anyway,
yeah, but Luther Van Dross would be wouldn't he be a beautiful vampire?
Wouldn't that be a great vampire?
That's
so a vampire star player coming into this team then. Scott, I'm not sure that I've seen vampires utilized within the Necro team much before. Maybe more expected Wilhelm or someone like that coming in. Does give them a little bit extra, sort of a very good star to take to try and give them a little bit more in this game.
It's a very good start to take. I know when I played Jack, when he played me earlier season, he took Count Luther as well. Having a strength 5 vampire against Woodies is not the most fun game in the world as well. So when I got a 1-0 win, it was just like over the moon with it. Yeah, it just gives it, not just the strength 5, but that hypno gaze to come in as well. All the edge to shenanigans in there, and the threat if he scores, you get the extra reroll. How old is young Joe Reader, by the way? Sounds like he's going to be a bit of a protege going forward. Obviously, coming from the Reader stable, he's got a very good pedigree.
I wouldn't want to misage him, but I think John has been preparing him for possibly a future season in the ADBBL, and he. It was a really nice game. I was next to them while they were playing this game, and I think what has to be called out as being very, very nice is that both John and Jane very much kind of had almost had the mentality that the most important thing here was that sort of all three of them, and that Joseph had a fun game of Blood Bowl. And Jane was really good in there were some things that Joseph said he wanted to do, and even though 3 points for Jane here put her in a contention for a top 4 spot, she was more than happy to kind of help and give some kind of guidance. And yeah, it was really nice to see. 12, John is saying, Joseph is. Joseph, welcome to the ADBBL. Hopefully we'll see you in a future season, and well done for putting up a good fight here against a well-established Necromantic Horror team. Looking in the chat as well, I am going to need somebody to, and I'm thinking, Andy Howe, you're the guy to do this. Make us up some t-shirts of a vampire Luther Vandross playing Blood Bowl. I feel like we've started something here that we can't ignore. Moving on to the next game, and this is the Buffalo Biggins versus the Dark Elf stand-in, and a 2-0 victory for the Dark Elf team, played by none other than our Mr. Scott Bryant himself. Scott, a little bit of an upset, I feel like, on the here, and I'm very keen to hear how it went down.
Oh, thanks, Chris. It's nice to know that my aura of incredulity and shocking everybody by doing something half decent comes across. Sorry, I'm just laughing. I've got the image of John Reader hothousing his son in terms of just having like a Rocky training montage. Roller 6 dodge, hypno gaze.
All while Luther Vandross plays in the background.
That's a beautiful image. Yes. So Dark Elves, these people, yeah. Really enjoyable. Second game, I played John, my second game ever playing Dark Elves. I played John actually and his vampires earlier. It's really quite refreshing that when your opponent rolls armor and they roll an 8, you don't then start worrying about, do I need to use the APOC or not, because they're not wood elves unless it's the blitzer. Yeah, I decided to take everybody's favorite squirrel, purely because I wanted numbers on the pitch. I decided that in terms of the strategy, I knew Harrison was going to be bashy. He plays these orcs very, very well. So I wanted to go in and at least try and, go for that result of at least scoring 1 and then seeing what happened in the second half. So, yeah, that was the reason for wanting to receive. Went down, managed to get actually, despite Chris Coe getting hurt, so apologies for that, Chris. I did actually get a completion with dump off, so that did work quite nicely. Managed to score on turn 8 with a few extra rushes, so Nuffle was definitely smiling. And then really, it was a question. There were 2 key turning points in them, a few key turning points, but 2 specifically. Good old one of the star players of the Buffalo Biggins, who was Harry's. His blitzer AJ Epinaza, the guy we mentioned before. I think he's got 27 SP. He's got block, dodge, tackle, mighty blow, strip ball. He's a very scary dude to play. So stayed away from him quite a lot. But he tried to do a dodge around Acorn, and he rolled a double 1. and unfortunately he went down. The ball went into the crowd, got sent off. Assassin picked it up, managed to. I was blitzed. I got a dice, and with the Assassins rolled fens, I stood off, and then managed to move out of the way. And then on the second blitz that Harrison managed to force on him with a big gun, he rolled a block. So he rolled so they went down, and then it was a question of the ball did scatter, but scattered nicely. The witch elf came in, picked it up, just went down the pitch with the side cage. Thank you, Tom. It was that exciting, yes, for the 2-0, but it could have gone another way, another day. It was very close, but it was very nice to play that. And Harrison always have great games against Harrison. Played in the best style, the best interest, and it was a lot of fun.
Tom, it's tough when the team that requires stand-ins is a team like Dark Elves. They're tier 1 for a reason. They're the highest armor of the elf teams, while having Edge 2 everywhere. They're a team that can punish bad luck really, really badly. And it sounds like that's partly what's happened here.
Yeah, exactly. And equally, we've been randomizing the skills on them, and they've actually got some quite good skills.
They've got very good skills, yeah. Tom. Even I'm a blitzer if you look on the team. I'm a wall dancer now. I've got dodge, block, and leap, and sure feet. Check me out, 130k. So yeah. Oh, and apologies, Tom. You're dead. Of course, you died.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not even on the roster. Look at that. No, it's like you say, it's a frustrating thing, but I'm right in saying that this team will not go through to the playoffs.
Correct. Yeah, they will drop down. They will basically kind of default and drop down the order and bump anyone up the order who is ahead of them. So they won't go through to the playoffs. Carl has made an interesting point in the chat. Good evening, Carl. Scary team to play against, and a scary team to play against someone that isn't precious over them too. And I found this when I've done standing games, that you are possibly more prone to trying something a little bit outlandish and a little bit out there, because you're not they're not your team. Maybe you do take more risks, and when you've got Edge 2 and things like that, and you've got the right skills on there, when those risks pay off, they pay off big time.
I don't know when you stood in as a proxy coach, Chris, but I didn't feel that I didn't feel I did anything differently with these guys that I would do with my woodies. So, for example, if I needed to rush, I'd rush even when it hasn't got sure feet. The sure feet skills definitely helps elves, of course, because it just eliminates that concern. So instead of a movement 7, you've effectively got a movement 9 piece, and basically you got Skaven then running around the pitch. So yeah, I appreciate what Carl said. It's difficult as well picking up a new team and trying to get on board with them. Obviously, these guys have got more synergies with the Wood Elves I usually play in this league. But yeah, I suppose it does give you a bit of a laissez-faire in terms of how you want to approach things. But then you can become overconfident, over-flippant, maybe try things that can turn it the opposite way.
Well done to you for a good performance with these elves. Harrison still with some games left to play, and still a chance. Needs some results to go elsewhere, but still in a good fight for 5 to 8 and an outside chance of top 4 as well. Going to be very, very close. Even that 5th to 8th position, there could be some coaches who just drop out, unfortunately. On to the next game we've got today, then the Wildemere Wasps versus Baldur's Army, Black Orcs versus Black Orcs, and a game that anytime I went over to look at, my God, I could barely tell whose player was who. Two quite similar kind of in the way that they've been done, and a mess of orc on orc and goblin on goblin and everything else on everything else here. A 2-0 victory for the Wildemere Wasps, who have been on a bit of an unfortunate run against some tough opponents this season. Lost the last 4 games against 4 very strong coaches. needed a win to maybe bounce back a little bit, and a win is what they got here with a 2-0 victory. Leanne, another loss on her sheet, unfortunately, but I reckon a lot learned from this one. And it sounded like, Scott, you were a bit closer to this one than I was, but it sounded like there was kind of a good amount of kind of coaching and advice going on at the same time. Obviously, two coaches, a coach that has played the Blackhawks more than the other, good to kind of share some thoughts.
Yeah, it was a really entertaining match. Two, big slug teams who not just were pretty similar on the stats and but they look pretty similar on the table. Just a shout out to Leanne for her demeanor, her attitude, and her enjoyment of the game as well. And if any coach wants to learn the secret of how to roll a 1-dice block and turn it into a blitz or a stumble most of the time, ask Leanne. She does it all the time. Also, shout out to Simon. He was being a consummate Blood Bowl coach. He was helping. He was supporting. He could have been that guy. He never fell into that genre as well. And he was really helpful. So it was really, both of them seemed to enjoy it. And I think, though, on the end of the day, the dice favoured Simon more in terms of him playing as he approached the game and looked at it. And a particular goblin that he's got, good old Moonface, who I think if Leanne could have got hold of and sort of stomped him into the ground at the end, she may have done that. But yeah, good win for Simon. Had a chat about his plans for next season. I think we'll see, a good showing from the Wasps in the playoffs. Will we see them next season? Possibly not.
It's interesting, Tom. Actually, like Leanne's results have not gone very well. She has been quite unfortunate. She's also had a very tough draw and lots of very good opponents to have to face. But actually, looking at some of her stats, she's actually got one of in that kind of bottom half of the table. She's got one of the best casualty differences. She is actually, and you look at a number of the games that she's played, she's not coming out with the touchdowns of the results. But in this game, she's 3-0 in the way of casualties to her. She's kind of makes that part of the game, it feels like she's doing well at. She is getting the punches and she's getting the casualties.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's slowly getting there with this team, and they're slowly building up skills. So it was a bit of she had 250 petty cash to start off with in inducements. So bringing in Bomber and Fungus the Loon. Interesting, because Bomber looks like he did make an appearance and caused a casualty, but Fungus doesn't seem to be anywhere to be seen on the actual run up. My only thoughts were, would you maybe go with Ripper rather than with the full 250 and rather than multiple star players? But that's just me. But equally, as you've said, both teams and both coaches have played exceptionally well. I personally think that Leanne should bring this team back for next season, because we're already starting to see that she's got some nice things. She's got a troll there with grab, but she's also got she's got two Black Hawks with 6 SPP on them, so you can get something nice on those. And you've also got another orc with Stand Firm in there, and a goblin with Sure Feet. And as Scott's just mentioned about the elves, that's a really nice thing to have on a goblin, to just keep dodging and running all the way through.
So now that TourPlay has this wonderful data feature for exporting data about your league, I can tell you that if you were to rank the table of 32 coaches by touchdown difference, Leanne sits in 8th in that table. There's elements of the game that are absolutely there. It's just touchdowns that maybe need to come along. Well done to Simon as well. A good victory here. Setting himself up nicely with a little bit of extra SPP to take through to playoffs. Moving on then to our penultimate game. We're back to the Riotous Rams, and we're back to the Vampires as well. And a 1-1 draw here between the Chaos Chosen and the Vampire team, in what felt like a very tense game. A game that I'll be completely honest, myself and Luke were playing next door to this one. And when it got towards the last few turns, and we were very keen on what the result could or couldn't be, we did just stop and stare at it for about 5 or 10 minutes until we knew what the result was. Very, very close near the end. Both coaches with a chance to take the win. The casualty box looking much better in favour of the Riotous Rams than it did in favour of the Suffolk Suckers, but they did manage to hold on to a 1-1 draw here. Scott, the Rams have got lots of tough games that they're now playing through. How many games sort of this is the second draw, so that's in the last 2 games, it's 4 points dropped out of 6 in the last 2 games, but plenty still to come. Would you start to be getting a little bit concerned, or still getting the casualty and getting the skills? Would you not worry?
I wouldn't worry at this moment in time if I was Rich. I think you actually described it very eloquently there, Chris, when you said about the Suffolk Suckers, and Andy probably will agree to this, were holding on towards the end. Even when they got the 1-1 draw with a 1-1 draw, even though we got the 1-1 with the second touchdown from good old Alex Cock again. I'm sure someone's going to soundbite me saying that at some point. At that point, you've still got Nanny and Bob sowing destruction, and this doesn't show, of course, all of the KOs as well that Andy was enduring as well. So it wasn't looking very pretty. I think he had bodies and throws just in the right place at the right time, and it literally could have been if Richard got a pickup with the ball, got it, the handoff to Nanny. Nanny was in, because we forget she's a movement 7. Well, I forgot she was a movement 7 in terms of that. So it literally was down to one of the last few dice rolls as well. It could have gone either way, because both coaches were out of re-rolls, but I think it was about turn 13, turn 14. So it was very entertaining, very tense. It was entertaining from a neutral's perspective, watching the other coaches so avidly involved and engaged in it as well. But I don't think Rich, I don't see his last 2 games as 4 points lost. I see them as 2 points gained. Particularly, he's been against some very challenging teams and some very challenging coaches. So well done, Rich, I think.
Yeah,
and Andy.
It's interesting because if my memory serves me correctly, Rich was one of the first people to play all his games in the previous season. So he did all his very early on and literally got them all out of the way very, very quickly on, and then sat back. This time he's doing the reverse. He's literally waiting to the last minute. Now, you could argue that, he's sportsmanship and stuff like that, and letting people build up SPP and skills on their players before he brings in Nanny and Bob. But yes, it's interesting to find out how and why he's done it that way. I think it's maybe just life getting in the way, maybe.
I think just share this with that's in chat at the moment, and thank you everybody for your beautiful contributions. Rich couldn't injure the thralls, used up all my injury rolls on the Ducks. It's harsh but funny, Chris. It is funny.
Well, if you scroll up the chat, to the corn game, it was exactly the same.
And then Andy rightly saying Luke and Chris sighing at the end. Yeah, that was a thing of beauty. And my takeaway was Chris putting his hand on my shoulder as I double skulled the Vargeist.
It was interesting. I think, I'll be the first to apologize if my obsession in other results has any kind of sort of impact. I think what's great is that we've got lots of coaches so invested in this season that you're kind of you get to this end of the season and what other results you need to go your way and what other results you don't. And I'm as invested as I am in this as I am kind of watching other kind of sports, or watching like Premier League games and seeing whether Southampton lose again to make sure that they can't catch up with Town. I'm as invested in how these are going, and I think it's it's so much. It's great fun. It's very tense. I think Luke will tell you that he's just since his last game, however many weeks ago, he's just been sat watching results anxiously until until the very end. Well done to the Rams and to the Suffolk Suckers in this game for not letting mine and Luke's anxious eyes impact their game. And like you said, Scott, a important point for both of these coaches as we look to finalise the table. Going on then to our last game, which is another Dark Elf stand-in. Scott, you again coming up here versus the Boulders Army, Leanne back. And there's two key things to say completely off the bat here. The first one is this was Leanne's first league touchdown in 2 seasons. So a big congratulations to her. It came from a throw teammate. It was absolutely spectacular and it was wonderful. The second thing to note is that I never have, and I think never will again, see a coach decide to not throw a bomb, but to throw bomber dribble snot at at an opponent. And I have no words. Scott, I have no words.
Yeah, it was a really fun match, and again, this was a follow-up. So this is our second game of the afternoon. So if people look at the top and again wonder why we didn't get to the end of it, we basically played as long as the time allowance was there in the store. Thank you for Scott for all of his support as usual within A&D. Yeah, my apologies. Probably that was my ineptitude actually led to that, because when I was doing the team and looking at the inducements, I misread my petty cash because it was just the elves, the standing team. I misread my petty cash as my inducements, so I thought I got 120k to spend here. So I got Acorn again because why not for an extra? I thought put some frenzy juggernaut fun against those goblins on the line, and yeah, and then that gave Leanne enough not just to get Bomber, but to get Fungus, a bribe, and the Wild Drummer as well, which is always a winner. So I thought I'm gonna do what you do against those two. You score early to see if they get off the pitch. So again, as Chris said, and I thought this was actually quite genius. If you're going to use a troll to throw a bomb, throw Bomber, because you can throw him, and if he lands it, it was just like a 2-up throw to stick a bomb right in the middle of my elves and the ball. So I thought, actually, that's quite really clever if he sticks it. Unfortunately, the troll fumbled Bomber, who knocked out a Black Hawk, who bounced then, knocked out good old Fungus, who did come back and cause some carnage. And then there, so it was funny. But Leanne, fair dues, after I scored, she did go for it. She did, listen, and she was really good rolling the dice on what she was doing and positioning. And yes, she got what I think other coaches would give a lot of coaches would give their right hands for, which is a one-turn throw teammate touchdown. And it was a thing of beauty. It was really, really good. So she played very well to get that. Then obviously Fungus and Bomber get sent off, and it started to go away in terms of even though I was down just before I scored that second touchdown, I was down to 6 men. So between Fungus, he KO'd 3 on one turn. So he was really having a field day with the elves. Just didn't roll the casualties. That's another day, and it could have been 3 more casualties as well as the one she had as well. So yeah, second half then. Just play. It was a lot of fun. We played it. Managed to get 2 touchdowns then. So well done. And Scott Phipps got MVP. Well done. So it's very, very fun. A lot of entertainment. And I hope Leanne, I know she likes her orcs. She loves the law, whether or not they're the team for her. But Leanne, again, you've been a fantastic coach in this season. So keep going.
Tom, there's a incredible enthusiasm from Leanne in all of her games, and it's the kind of it's like a child at Christmas when someone turns to you and goes, "I want to throw this player at this player," with just a massive smile on their face. It's really great. I think my gut says that if we can succeed on anything, we will succeed. We should try and succeed on getting Leanne to play goblins in a future season with all of the kind of fun and nonsense that you can do. It almost feels like the perfect fit, because in all of these games, when we look at what she's done, she's always gone for just the fun, the stupid, the ridiculous. It feels like a match made in heaven.
I love that attitude. It grounds people, because let's be honest, there's a huge array of different coaches out there, and I'm all for throwing things, as you well know, and just watching the other opponent go, you can, but what? but why? Why would you do that? And then doing it, and I love that. And it just is. And come on, at the end of the day, it's a game of rolling dice and having fun, and that's 100% the main thing. Shouldn't be taken too seriously. This just is a little bit of ray of sunshine in the game, just to be able to do these things and just try them out. Because who knows? It may be the next. It may be the next little tactic that everyone will be doing.
Well, you say that, Tom. But firstly, Tom, you say it's just a game. You've got Chris Coe next to you. Do you realise that's?
I know
you're not going to get any synergies there, really. But secondly, Scott Norman, and a big shout out and a doff of the cap to Scott Norman. He says, "I will take Leanne under my goblin wing, spread the way of goblin bullshit." Yes, Scott. Scott's loving the fact as well. He's now realised, yeah, you can throw Bomber, and if he lands, he makes it. He can throw it from wherever. So I think if in his next match, if Rich does the the star player bingo, and if you were to draw Mork and you were to draw Bomber, that's a heady combination.
Yeah, I think the challenge has been laid now, hasn't it? To Scott Norman to throw Bomber, to then throw Bomber behind the enemy line, to then throw bombs at the enemy line.
Because funny enough, when I took Deep Root and Cindy, Scott Phipps
wanted to throw Cindy.
He wanted to throw Cindy because he was like, "Oh, you could throw her, and then they could throw bombs." But Cindy does not have the right stuff, but Bomber does, apparently.
Wow. Congratulations to Leanne for getting that touchdown. Throw teammate touchdowns are spectacular, and if it's the only touchdown that you have scored this season, it is a very worthy touchdown to have scored. So many congratulations there. We'll chat at some point later, and we'll try and get you playing goblins, because I think you would absolutely love it. That is our last game. So let's have a little look at the standings as they are going into the last week of fixtures. Atomic Cherry Bombs have already secured their place in the top 4. I believe the Numpties have as well. Chaos Storm and the Gilded Knights of Cerulean will both be looking over their shoulders, because I think they can both be removed from those positions if results go against them. So it'll be interesting to see how we go there. Actually, I think possibly Chaos Storm are secure in that top position. No, they're not. No, they could still drop down. Rust Bay, Riptides, Nuffle Dusters, World's Edge Berserkers, and Huntington's Folly, all occupying a very tight 5th to 8th place there. Wolver Swamps and Shamblers have a game to play and could still break into that second tier as well. Clueless Crusaders looking possibly safe in that 9 to 12 position, but maybe just keeping a little eye on what other results could happen there. And the Boulders Bowlers at the bottom of the table, propping it up there in that division. Nuffle's Blood Bowl Conference then, Transfigurian Terriers secure in that top position. Bitey Ducks and Norfolk Gladiators both looking over their shoulders at other results going their way. Dead Star Belgrave can confirm their place in the top 4 with a win against the Rams, but they can also confirm the Ducks' place in the top 4 if the Rams win or they draw. So lots of results, very important to a lot of people at the top there. Play Brigade dropping down into that 5 to 8 slot. Suffolk Suckers moving up into that slot there. Riotous Rams down in 10th, but many games left to play, moving their way up the table. Looking at the bottom here, Boulder's Army sitting at the bottom currently with the Inglorious Bastards at the Top Hat Society, and the Elves will drop into that group, well, as we've previously said. That's our table. We have 1 week left of fixtures to go. All games have to be played by the 19th of January, which is next Sunday. If you haven't got the game booked in yet, please try and get that game booked in. If you have any concerns, if you need any help, if whatever it is, please get in contact with myself and we will do everything we can to try and make sure all of these games are played. If you're anticipating playing a stand-in, please again get in touch with us if we haven't already tried to book it in, so that we can try and get you a stand-in to make sure that all the games are played. We normally, in the first roundup after the group stage, normally do the draw in that roundup. We won't be doing that this time. Instead, we will be making sure the draw is done before the roundup, and then we will go through what the draw looks like here next Monday night. Because there are 4 different draws and lots of other parameters in play, we're going to make sure it's done right beforehand. And then we will go through what the playoffs look like. So you've got that to look for next week. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you very much, Tom, for being here as always. Thank you everybody for tuning in this week. 1 week left to go. Let's see how the results play out. We'll see you next week to go through all of the action. See you then.